Welcome into the Show 6 podcast, where we break down the championship series for Pokemon Go. Today's episode is a big one, as we'll be covering Godzilama's kaiju-level rampage through Brisbane, how Master Mahir and Charming Pori translated grassroots tournament success into utter dominance in the TPC region, a brief look at the APAC qualifiers so far, and finally, the largest North America regional to date in Atlanta. We're going to travel 15,000 kilometers across the globe to kick off the show in Brisbane. So stretch your legs, grab some snacks, and pop your headphones in. It's time to lock in. This is the Show 6 podcast. It's April, spring is here, the sun is out, the birds are singing. It's a beautiful day to talk about some competitive Pokemon Go, and we have so much to talk about. Zzweilous, welcome in my esteemed co-host, competitor, and friend. How are you feeling?
Hello. I'm feeling great, especially because it's going to be our first YouTube episode. I'm really excited for that. Like, you will be able to see me pointing at you if you are watching this on YouTube. So yeah, don't miss out on that. If you've been following us on like the various other platforms and mediums, we do appreciate that. But now you get even more Show 6, and we have so much to cover. And I'm very excited to get right into the meat and potatoes of it when we head over to Down Under.
I feel like because we have all the TPC region tournaments in May, it feels like there are like 4 or 5 different events. We're really starting to pile on things. A lot of big metrics have been hit. For example, the Brisbane regionals, we saw a trainer that was actually from the APAC region, from Japan, finish second place. Atlanta, 220 players in North America, which is the biggest one so far. The TPC qualifiers are typically online. So when we do see those, we have a lot of signups, especially for the India qualifiers. If I recall, there were tons and tons of players there. But we're going to try to move through this chronologically. You had a great list of events in order to start the show. Like you said, Brisbane is first up. Let's talk about Godzilama because I'm kind of surprised we haven't talked about this so far. It's April 18th when we're recording. This was back on April 6th. I feel like we've been sitting on this for a couple of weeks, but Godzilama proving that nice guys can win. This is very much like Richie 1409 energy in my mind.
Yeah, like honestly, Brisbane, big shout out again to the crew around PvP Steve bringing us a community stream once again. So we do get to see those battlers in action. And it was a little bit of the story of like the Aussies defending their home turf, as it tends to be, because now that it is possible for trainers from the TPC region to snatch away an invite from us TPCI people by winning a tournament or by coming fourth at an IC. A lot of these Asian trainers who are obviously very good, as we know from the GBL leaderboards, think that Australia hits kind of the sweet spot of being fairly easy to travel to if you're already from the APAC region. Still a good distance, but more manageable than maybe going over to the US or to Europe. Um,
Mhm.
and also those tournaments being relatively small in size. So we had multiple competitors actually traveling over. I think Ishikawa Boy announced that he was going. And when we look at the top 8, we do see familiar faces like Yeteruna, who is one of the best Korean battlers and also had a pretty impressive run at EUIC. And obviously Choose with a lot of O's from Japan, making it all the way to the grand finals. But the Australians were successful in defending Brisbane, and it was a name that we might not have expected, Speedy.
That was such a dynamic grand finals to watch. To your point, Swireless, I did watch the community stream that Steve and company hosted, and it was really just a testament of the power of Guzzlord. I know I was harping about Guzzlord constantly on the Atlanta stream last weekend, but I'll just give the full teams here for our grand finals. Godzilama with Azumarill, Guzzlord, Chargebug, one of the Z Swireless favorites there, Swalot, as well as Talonflame and Malamar versus Choose with Azumarill, Clodsire, Lapras. So kind of rocking a double water team with the poison type Clodsire, Shadow Drapion, Shadow Sableye, and Shadow Annihilate. What I really took away from this grand finals was just that it felt like the will that Godzilama was imposing on Choose, it just kind of wore him down as the series went on. Choose a very nimble player playing with a lot of kind of charge attack oriented Pokemon. I mean, you've got Azumarill, right? Bubble is a very kind of medium damage fast attack. You've got Clodsire, which is all about the charge attacks. Sableye, Annihilate, Shadow Drapion. But the power of Godzillama's team was really, really impressive. And if you look at this team, there were three Pokemon that reminded me of a grassroots tournament, which is a theme that you and I are going to come back to several times in the show. The Guzzlord, Swalot, and Talonflame trio was actually played by nickname in the Dez is the Best cash prize tournament. Of course, swapping some pieces around. Godzillama opting for Malamar as his dark type instead of Shadow Sableye, opting for Charge Bug in place of Cradily, and opting for the Azumarill in place of Lapras.
So funny that you mentioned nicknames practice tournament run and not his Stockholm gold medal, because I was like very much thinking of his achievements in March specifically. And yeah, like Brisbane felt like a bit of a continuation in that we see the Swallowed Guslord combination again. I think we had two Talon Flames in the Stockholm Grand Finals actually. And obviously Azu is making an appearance again. Like if we look at the top eight, there's only two teams I think that don't run the Water Bunny, the greatest of all time in terms of Pokemon Go
Mm.
PvP. So yeah, that's like pretty much sticking around. And so yeah, I was wondering whether the meta would stay that way. Now that it essentially did well in grassroots, did well in Stockholm, did well in Brisbane, and it was very interesting that it did not stay that way. But I also don't want to get ahead of myself. I do want to
Mm.
talk a little about Godzilama
Mm.
because if we look at the top eight bracket, we have like a bunch of previously worlds qualified players from Australia. I see Mikey Morgs, I see Rick Flareon, I see Valiant Wish. All of those are kind of household names. But
Mm.
Godzilla feels a little newer. I feel like there wasn't really a top cut to speak of previously to this event. But where I've noticed his presence pretty significantly, as
Mm.
he 2-0'd me in one of those tournaments, is in the Candle Cult server of Inadequates, where there's essentially daily practice tournaments at this point. And Godzilama was definitely one of the names that put in work there and essentially like prepared really hard for this event. And I
Mm.
always love to see practice paying off. So again, if you want to become from what is essentially a previous no name to a regional
Mm.
champion, beating out multiple worlds qualifiers and foes from around the globe. But I get practicing because apparently it's paying off.
I mean, you said, daily practice tournaments. I saw one, I think it was April, I think it was yesterday, the day or the day before. There were three practice tournaments in one single day in the Candle
So,
Cult.
like as we speak, we are 30 minutes away from the next practice tournament. And
Yeah.
after this recording wraps up, I will probably host another one. So yeah, this is about accurate.
That's so sick. So just as an aside, in the server, any mod can host a practice tournament. It doesn't have to be Martine.
So actually, we have had a bunch of new hosts, like an influx of new hosts. It helps if you have been a presence around the community for a little while, so
Hmm.
Martine and the mods know that you're trustworthy.
Hmm.
But any help is honestly welcome, especially because we're a very international crew that covers a lot of time slots, so that every region gets the practice they deserve.
Yeah, honestly, I was looking at the tournament schedule and I said, oh, well, I can play in the 8 a.m. practice tournament, or I can play in the 3 p.m. practice tournament, or I can play in the 8 p.m. practice tournament. And all of the tournament listings are adjusted for your respective time zone. So when you do read them out, that is your local time. It's just the work has already been done for you. But sorry to get off on that tangent. I just really appreciate what Martine is doing over in the Candle Cult. I think it's really, really helpful. And again, the grassroots success is something that we're going to come back to yet again. One more thing I wanted to mention about the Brisbane stream is that Godzilla did defeat Yetaruna, a top eight finisher from South Korea, did defeat Yetaruna to make it over to day number two. So not only did Godzilama hold the line against the trainer from Japan. He also defeated the South Korean trainer. And I really appreciate that you mentioned South Korea earlier. Even back to Worlds 2022, our first grand finals with Godon Hada, he was from South Korea. So this is a region that's known for a very high caliber of player. And for Godzilla not only to beat Choose in the finals, but also Yedaruna, definitely a very notable accomplishment. So I'm excited to see what he does. I know that we're going to talk about this later, but Swalot is a Pokemon that we saw nickname Crush with, Godzilla Crush with it the next weekend, but you kind of alluded to this. The meta didn't stay the same, and I'm really curious why that was.
Yeah, I feel like it would be best to get into that once we have arrived at the Atlanta regional.
Okay.
But yeah, I feel like a lot of it has to do with the pairing of Swalot and Guzzlord feeling
Mm,
just so prominent. But what then emerged a little later on was the not only the pairing of Azumarill and Shadow Drapion, which we have come to know from especially the last meta, but also another familiar core in Azumarill and Lowland Sandslash,
mm,
with Azumarill obviously hard beating Guzzlord and Alolan Sandslash hard beating Swalot. But not only does Alolan Sandslash hard beat Swalot, it also is pretty much favored against the Guzzlord as well, especially if it runs Powder Snow, which is another debate that we'll get into.
oh,
So
okay.
now that Sandslash has essentially risen to the forefront as the premier core breaker, the Swalot Guzzlord core is just less appealing.
Wow. All right. That was on my radar as well. I'm excited to see that we tied back to the same Pokemon. But you're right. We're kind of getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Sorry to hit you with that meta question in the middle of the Brisbane recap. But I just want to say again, final thoughts. I thought this was a great tournament. If you haven't watched the community stream, definitely check that out. PvP Steve and the crew put on a wonderful, wonderful performance. They had the big green backdrop behind them as well. It looked good. Everyone was dressed up. I think one of the casters was wearing shorts, if not mistaken, or maybe it was a little bit more casual on the bottom half.
That's at least very Australian, right? Like,
True, true. I mean, it's hot out there, right? You gotta be comfortable and professional. So I fully support it. I've casted plenty of grassroots tournaments wearing shorts. So, but you never knew,
they're
did
they're,
you? You never
they're
knew.
comfy and easy to wear. So I
That's true.
would not be opposed to wearing shorts at an official cast.
Well, opposed to the large leap that we had to take from Germany and the US to go down to Brisbane, let's take a short hop over to the TPC India playoffs. Now, I want to remind everybody with the TPC region tournaments, there is a qualifier stage and then a playoff stage. The top trainers from the qualifier do enter into the playoff, and the top four from the playoffs will get their world's berths. So let's go ahead and talk about some India gameplay. Master Mahir tearing things up, huh?
Yeah, and this is a name that had a stellar early spring of this year for sure, because you were already pointing out the nickname run at one of the prize tournaments in March, but Mastam here actually managed to make it all the way to the grand finals of I think the Heidonis prize tournament,
Mhm.
and he was up against yours truly,
I was
and
to say that's as far as he got.
even though I managed to defeat him, I honestly think that he outplayed me. I had the better team
Oh.
composition, but he had the better plays. So I have a lot of respect for Master Me here that I gained during that event, because like he went into that as somebody who just didn't have the exposure that a lot of trainers from North America or Europe do have.
Mhm.
So he was like kind of the underdog on paper, but I think with his gameplay, he proved that he's a force to be reckoned with. And then he went on to win the qualifiers already. Well, like those are essentially like, okay, you tie for a position depending on your wins, but still essentially the best record alongside a couple other trainers
Mhm.
in the India qualifier. And now he actually managed to take it all in the actual playoffs, where the top four emerge and are finally qualified for Worlds.
Exactly right. Master Mahir in the qualifier. So there were two regional qualifiers, basically like simultaneous or parallel tournaments that led up to the playoffs. He was part of the India regional qualifier too. They very stacked bracket. I mean, he had Nava Empire, Beelzeboy, Austin Prince was in this bracket, Scarlet Wiz as well, the Ace Lancelot. A lot of trainers that I recognize from a lot of India grassroots tournaments. So this is a very, very tough bracket. And he was able to win with Jump Bluff, Shadow Drapion, Lapras, Clodsire, Guzzlord, and Shadow Annihilate. But he made a really significant pivot in his team structure for the actual playoffs. Master Mahir is able to win with a lot of the same picks. He still had the Guzzlord, still had the Lapras, still had the Shadow Jump Bluff, but he went for Claydol, another Zzweilous special, the Shadow Sableye, and Bastiodon. And apparently, I heard rumors. I don't know if you heard this as well, Zzweilous, but I heard a rumor that the Bastiodon was in particular to counter things like Beelzebub's Carbink that he was able to place top four in the qualifier stage. So bringing a Bastiodon just to counter one Pokemon or maybe one trainer, that's a bold move.
It is a very interesting observation, though, that I had never thought of before you mentioned it, actually, because these qualifier into playoff style tournaments actually allow you to prepare for the teams of the competitors that you can expect based on their previous tournament. If the one qualifies you for the other, it allows you to change your team in between, but you can still
Mm,
just like have like a feeling for what your opponents are likely to do, whether they bring what they already piloted successfully or whether they try to adjust in a certain way to the meta that you just saw. Whereas in a regular regional, you can't really adjust your team from day one to day two. And this was essentially India's day two on the road to Worlds. So
mhm.
I really love this little micro adjustment, especially if there's like players that you suspect to bring a certain pick or to do really well. And honestly, it's great for India that Beelzebub didn't come top four again, because that
Mm.
means they get another Worlds qualifier, as he was, as the fourth place finisher from last year's Worlds, already pre-qualified going into this.
That's actually a very good point, right? The top four finishers from Worlds get that automatic qualification to Worlds next year. But yeah, Beelzebub, very, very talented trainer. Yeah, he actually finished within the top 24. So not even top 16 or top eight, which just goes to show you a fourth place Worlds finisher finishing there in this regional playoffs. That just speaks to the overall skill level. I do want to mention that in the grand finals, we didn't get a stream for this, but I did take a look at the bracket. And because this is a qualifier, or excuse me, qualifier into playoffs style tournament, it's not a best of five in the grand finals. It's going to be a best of three, but there is a reset. And the opponent that Master here took on, XX Dane's Life XX, actually did win that first bout 2-1, and then forced a reset. Master here then responded with a swift 2-0. I assume it was Swift. We didn't see it, but I assume he was able to bring him down pretty quickly. A couple of interesting Pokemon shoutouts. Nava Empire with Furret. Maybe this is kind of like a prequel of what we were going to get with Semi and Atlanta, but I did not really see Furret making too many waves. I know I might be alone on that. We might have a Furret believer here on the podcast. A little bit more of the Swallow Guzzlord, Fake Soul finishing fourth place. Some Talonflame here and there. Austin Prince with a very, very inspired Blastoise and Corviknight core, which is pretty sick. I like that a lot. It's super fun. Two of my favorite Pokemon. Other than that, was there anything that stood out to you or anything that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I think you've actually mentioned the key components of this event for the most part. Like,
Mhm.
I feel like we have seen a couple of very interesting meta reads all succeeding, which is really lovely that so many different variations um, have been able to actually place really well or even qualify. I feel like the Ferret is already like a little bit of the anti-meta pick of choice, where I also like felt that into the Azumarill, into the Sableye, it's just like a really, really strong core breaker and also flexible pick. So I really like
Mhm.
Nava Empire's team like that. Whereas I have seen a good amount of Malamar, which was on XX
Mhm.
Dance Live's team, which is essentially one of those fighters that beat other fighters. And I feel like we've seen adjustments like that as well, doing well in Brisbane also.
Mhm.
And then obviously the Bastiodon, where if you don't respect it in a certain meta, it can just like steal games because you always have to prepare for it. Like there's Pokemon that are good, that are flexible, that but that don't really put the bench pressure on your opponent to really choose lines that might be more predictable. Whereas with the Bastiodon, either your opponent takes a massive risk or he plays a predictable line. there's not really anything in between with the Pokemon that dominant in its positive matchups.
Mhm. I feel like the rule of thumb with Bastiodon is that it can be the lead, it can be the closer, but it is never, under any circumstance, is it ever the safe swap, right? Never ever.
We have seen multiple people safe swap a Shadow Jumpluff into a Powder Snow Alola Ninetales team in Atlanta, so
Spoiler alert! Spoiler
there's
alert!
there's always people that do such a thing, but yeah, for the most part, Bastiodon not the safest Pokemon out there. You really want to play for alignment with it, and yeah, there's other Pokemon that get you the alignment, and once you have the alignment, it's Bastiodon's time to shine.
Well, I don't know that I have much else to offer in regards to the India playoffs. Again, I just want to reiterate that there's a qualifier stage and a playoff. We kind of talked about both stages because Master Me here swept both of them. But the next thing that we would cover here on the show is actually going to be the South Korea qualifier. Am I following things chronologically?
Yes, this is exactly the next slide on my little notes here. So I feel like we're still on track.
Perfect, perfect. Okay. Um, Honestly, I just have some kind of anecdotal things to offer to offer to this discussion. Do you want to talk about Charming Pori? Do you want to kind of lead into the South Korea qualifier?
So there's a lot of things to say about Charming Pori, like from the team that we see here, which is fairly unusual. So what isn't unusual is obviously Azumarill Shadow Drapion core. Then we have the Malamar and the Charjabug, which are like not super common, but they did well in Brisbane. They are core breakers that we see here and there. But then there's also the Diggersby. Diggersby is a Pokemon that felt as if it had fallen out of favor a little bit, in
Mhm.
part because of the advent of things like Cradily, where your quick attacks are resisted and the grass nuts hit for super effective, where you can't even really hit the grass type for super effective back because your fire punch is only neutral now. And then also the Dugong, which
Mm.
um, is a Pokemon that we thought would have been phased out of the meta because of Lapras just doing ice water things a little better now and also winning the head to head. But not only did Charming Pori make those Pokemon work, he also did it twice because this is actually the champion of the other prize tournament. So there was the one where I was in the final against Master Mihir, and then I think the other one was Charming Pori against Pyro Panda, if I'm not mistaken. And
Correct.
Charming Pori actually won it all that weekend. So yeah, that was essentially another story of just a success story continuing over to the official circuit, which was really fun to see.
No, you're exactly right, and he did it with exactly the same team. I mean, down to the move sets, nothing changed at all. Chargebug, Dugong, Diggersby, Azumarill, Malamar, and Shadow Drapion. I actually compared a lot of the different teams because there's also a squad that we'll talk about a little bit later that reminded me of something I saw previously this season, but. Yeah, Charming Pori, exactly the same. And if you go and visit their page on Twitter, it's so endearing because after they won that cash prize tournament, they said, I won the Des is the Best cash prize tournament. This is my biggest accomplishment as a Pokemon Go PvP player, and I'm just so proud. And then they turn around and, like we've alluded to, they brought the exact same kit over to South Korea. Now that qualifier stage was on April 6th. I want to point out that the playoff stage is going to be this weekend on April 20th. So Charming Pori will clash against some of the best in South Korea to try to win the title. I believe there were 77 players in that actual qualifier stage, and then if I'm not mistaken, maybe the top 16 are going to advance to the playoffs. If I'm not incorrect there. But yeah, Charming Pori, very very fun. Let's talk about some interesting picks though. The runner up for the qualifier in South Korea had a different fairy type that I'm not used to seeing whatsoever. I thought this thing was from Master League Premier Cup. How is it in Great League succeeding?
This is so funny. I'm so glad that we get to talk about this because the teams that made it through in South Korea were wild, and we know that this is not an instance of like just some random six Pokemon advancing because maybe the level of competition isn't at high. It's the opposite in South Korea. Like all of those people
Oh yeah.
are incredibly good at the game, and the second highest finisher. Not only did PSNX Legend Push have an Emolga on their team, it also had the fairy type Florges, which you do not see in the Open Grand League whatsoever, but it did get a buff. It did get Trailblaze, which it paces to very, very nicely. It's five fairy winds to every Trailblaze. And yeah, that way it not only has coverage against Pokemon like Azumarill, like Diggersby, like Dugong, it also boosts its own attack. And if you just look at how the Florges would match up into a team like Charming Pories, it looks playable. Like it doesn't look
Yeah.
like a crazy pick anymore.
Well, I'd argue that the three most prominent types in competitive Go, especially this season, are dark, water, and ground. And what does Florges do? It absolutely hammers all three of those sets. Also, a little bit of a shade of what we're going to see later on in Atlanta. We have Alolan Sandslash also on Legend Bush's team. But let's talk about Goji in third place. This is a trainer that does not screw around, you guys. Last year, or excuse me, in the 2023 South Korea playoffs, so 2 years ago, they actually finished ninth. I don't believe that they won, or no, yeah, they finished ninth in the playoffs, and I don't know if they were invited to Worlds at that point. In 2024, the South Korea playoffs last year, they placed first overall with Giratina Origin Form and Mantine, along with Wigglytuff, Talonflame, Registeel, and Whiscash. It was a different time, all right, everybody, different time. And they brought the same exact team to Worlds. But this is a trainer. The point I'm trying to emphasize is that they've competed in the playoffs 3 years in a row. They finished in the top 10 3 years in a row, even sweeping last year. And they bring Lucario, Charjabug, and Shadow Kanto Marowak. What is going on with this team, Zzweilous? Can you make any sense of what's happening here?
I really want to know whether this is just Goji being so confident in his own ability to just run five Pokemon that are real and then a Lucario because it looks cool, or whether the Lucario actually did things. I do have to say it's a very fun fighting type because you do have that steel typing to kind of make up for your lack of bulk by just resisting a lot of types, like resisting. Lucario never resists anything, if we're being honest. But also it has access to the move Force Palm, which is incredibly powerful. And it does have coverage options in, I think, Blaze Kick and Thunder Punch.
Mm.
You can essentially pick whatever you like best. So it has respectable damage output. I've been like messing around with it in practice tournaments a couple months ago. I would probably not ever bring it to a regional, but you can win a game with it. It's like not unbringable necessarily, and I don't know, maybe it found an opening. I still think this is a don't do that at home kids situation.
Yeah, I think that this is a professional, right? Versus your run of the mill player. Force Palm, Power Up Punch, Thunder Punch, Blaze Kick, Shadow Ball, Close Combat. There are a lot of different tools in Lucario's kit, and I guess if you look for targets, I mean, you could say Dugong is a target, maybe Alolan Sandslash is a target, Cradilly, another good target for fighting type pressure. But there's just so many downsides as well. You said this might be the bring five real Pokemon and then one meme. This might be the Martine Shadow Palkia EUIC strat at play. I don't even know. I don't even know how to explain this. I wish we could see these battles. I desperately want streams for these tournaments because they're so fun and so exciting. But the fun doesn't stop there, Zzweilous. We had the return, the resurrection, if I may, of Galarian Corsola with Dragon Pie 1, finishing within the top six with Emolga as well. And then we also had a really fun team from Yetaruna, who we've talked about already on this podcast because they traveled down to Brisbane. What the heck is going on? Because I'll just let you explain. What is this? What is this,
Yeah,
Wireless?
Yetaruna yet again added with a spicy team. She is bringing back the Ariados, which she has been trusting in for a good while, and I think it honestly looks great. Like if you look at the Charming Pori team of Azu, Diggersby, Dugong, Shadow Drapion, Charjabug, Malama, you can safe
Mm,
swap Ariados. It kind of looks like a real Pokemon here. Then we have Whimsicott, which also is like one of those Pokemon that people run if they want to give themselves a challenge. Um,
mm,
but it does similar things to Florges, right? Where you have the fairy and grass coverage that hits a lot of prominent types in the meta really, really hard. But the fun doesn't stop there because, like, the most normal Pokemon is an Alolan Sandslash paired with a Shadow for Alligator. But that's not the only water type. We do have Swampert. Swampert is a Pokemon that I personally think is probably one of the best core breakers at the moment
mhm.
because everybody has kind of been adopting the Azumarill, Shadow Drapion, Alolan Sandslash strat. And if you want to see a Pokemon that beats all of those, Sludge Swampert is your guy. I feel like that is a Pokemon that we could see more of at
Mhm.
future events, especially in the immediate future, building on the Atlanta meta. And then rounding out Yetaruna's incredibly spicy team is Morpeko, the GBL demon that just ramps up and sweeps any team that isn't prepared for it. And yeah, apparently a good amount of trainers were not prepared for Yeteruna because she managed to finish in the top 8 and very comfortably moved on to the playoff round. Also,
Yeah.
another trainer that might not have brought the spiciest team, but that I do want to mention is Mang Mi, where I think
Mm.
Mang Mi is actually the Pokemon Go name of Sejun Park, who is the Pokemon legend,
Oh.
former VGC world champion with Pachirisu, um, incredible, versatile Pokemon player, and yet again dabbling in Pokemon Go PvP for a little bit.
That's actually so interesting. I saw Sejun's name on the bracket, and that was one of the notes I was going to make. I did not know about the Mung Mi alias. But yeah, Sejun's completing. Here's my note: Sejun is competing in the playoffs, taking on Pokemon Master in round 1 on April 20th. So if you are a Pachirisu fan, a former world champ Sejun Park fan, definitely follow along with their bracket. One more note I wanted to make about Yetaruna. She competed in Brisbane, finished 5th overall, came over here to the South Korea qualifiers, only changed one thing about her entire team. That was Annihilate in Brisbane, swapping that out for Whimsicott at the South Korea qualifier. So maybe realize, I've got a Alolan Sandslash and Morpeko on my team. I need a bit more ground coverage, a bit more fighting coverage. What does both of those things? It's got to be the Whimsicott, right? So very, very nice adjustment. And I really like sometimes if players compete in multiple tournaments, we can track their changes, their adjustments, their thought processes. We've been able to do that with Master Mahir, with Yetaruna, with tons of different trainers so far. And it's always really, really fun to see how they kind of, sharpen their swords and get ready for the next challenge. I think those were all the notes I had for the South Korea qualifiers, and we might be ready to move on to the next thing.
Yes, let's do that. Oh, I think I see there's like two things left over. One is the APAC regional qualifiers, and I
Hmm.
feel like then the big ticket item is actually on the menu. I feel like then we can go into Atlanta, but there's
Perfect.
more. There's more qualifiers leading into playoffs eventually. And I think in the APAC region, so the one thing that everybody was wondering is, will Yekai actually throw down again? Because as the Hong Kong hero, our world champion is obviously eligible to compete in the APAC qualifiers. Not that he
Hmm.
needs to; he is obviously pre-qualified. But yeah, people were like wondering whether the man or boy with the target on his back, figuratively,
The young
is
man, the
going
young
to
man.
show up. But no, he set this one out. He essentially let others have the stage. There was a 7-0 sweep by Walker 0623 with 3 shadow Pokemon, Drapion, Jumpluff, and Annihilate, as well as the trusty Azumarill Claydol, which apparently now is just hard meta, and again the Dugong, which maybe shouldn't be as overlooked given its success in these events.
I was actually catching up a bit with Wadaj before the Atlanta regional, and he was telling me that Dugong looks so free and so safe and so good right now. So maybe it's one of those things. Just when we thought it was dead, it comes storming back. Excuse me. Um, Walker, like you mentioned, taking that first place overall. We also had Silent coming in second, and I love how you mentioned the triple shadows on Walker. I'm going to raise you 6 shadows on the third place finisher, Arb WTF heal, if that means what I think it means. That's actually really funny. Arb WTF with 6 shadows: Shadow Blastoise, Shadow Kento Marowak, Shadow Lowland Sandslash, Shadow Drapion, Shadow Jumpluff, and Shadow Sableye on that team. And then friends, I want to say friends with hands, but I know it's not that. It's friends with Haas.
I
So
think
they
it's
also.
France with a Z actually.
Oh, dang it! You're right. You're right. I was wrong on both of my attempts there. Also, some
You
other,
tried.
yeah, it's worth the try, I guess. Also, a few other talented trainers. XR Vaz was able to finish within the top 8. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. OW Ketchum, I do recognize, and Annie C84 with, I believe that is a Jangmo-O Frostlass Furret team, which is pretty sick. But yeah, so that's one thing I want to mention is that the silent team looked familiar. And I was like, huh, I feel like I've seen this before. Well, It does share four Pokemon in common with Master Mahir's championship team. Silent had Azumarill Golisopod, Master Mahir had Lapras and Shadow Sableye. The other four components are all the same: Claydol, Bastiodon, Guzzlord, and Shadow Jump Bluff. That core four, as we like to say, is consistent. So that was actually really sick to see that carrying over into the APAC qualifiers.
Yeah, and like if you take a look at it, then Lapras and Azu are fairly similar in that they are bulky water types with potential ice coverage, whereas Sableye and Golisopod are similar in that they are Shadow Claws that pace really quickly to their move. So, like the team idea was pretty much identical. The execution was slightly different, but in both cases, very successful.
Very, very successful. This was a qualifier tournament. So, a reminder to everybody, this was just the first stage. The top 16 trainers did advance to the playoffs, and then the playoffs will determine the four trainers that will gain their world's qualifications. So, again, we're kind of like breezing through these because, in regards to South Korea and APAC in particular, these are just qualifiers. They're not actual playoffs, they're not actual world's invitation tier tournaments. But we will come back and cover those playoffs once we get there. But Zzweilous, we've breezed through, I think, already four different competitive formats so far. We're 35 minutes in. Are you ready to talk about the biggest NA regional so far this
I
season?
feel like I am. I feel like I am, especially because we chatted about this earlier a little bit, and
Mhm.
we were essentially talking about how this is the best regional of all time. But then I hit you with the it's also the worst regional of all time, and
Yeah.
I feel like we have a lot to talk about.
I got the quote from I believe it's Great Expectations. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. The Atlanta Regionals, basically in a nutshell. Um, let's just preface this, right? 220 trainers. If you're from outside the U.S., there are a few different airport hubs within the states that you have thousands upon thousands of flights coming in and out every single day. Atlanta is probably number one. You could argue Dallas. It's like a two horse race between those two airports. Atlanta, Dallas, Charlotte, Boston. There's a really, really big hub up in like Salt Lake City, for example. But the other ones kind of pale in comparison to Atlanta. There was no Orlando regional this season, so it really felt like everyone from the Southeast that might have traveled down the Panhandle would be coming up to Georgia for this competition. And that turned out to be true. 220 players. I saw our podcast co-host almost attended as well, but was unable to make it sadly because I'm really curious how you would have done. But very, very talented trainers. Let's just rapid fire some names, right? I know people's ears are going to perk up. Septilice, El Cavissimo, Dre Flames, Dijon the Jin, Dilap Trong, Nighttime Clasher, Semi, Mountain Dugong, Tomahawk UK, Ash Nash, Out of Pocket, and Ilqm, all competing at this tournament. And this day one to me, Zzweilous, really felt like upset city. We saw Wadaj go down. We saw Elite go down. We saw so many former regional champions just toppled by up and comers, whether it was Silent Beast or Firestar. Very, very talented trainers taking down these former champs. Um, what was your read of like the vibe of day one of how things are going in Atlanta? Was it what you expected? Was it what you didn't expect?
So first of all, Upset City is definitely very, very accurate. Like Junebug not in day two. Like with its accent, it's like a little bit of a pattern, but I'm so rooting for him to have another breakthrough tournament because I don't know. I'm just kind of invested in his show six art at this point because he has nothing to prove, but I just think he's such a welcome presence in the Twitch scene, and I feel like there would just be a lot of people really excited to see him get another top cut or another medal or another win.
He's such
But
a nice
again, it
guy.
just like adds to how stacked this tournament was that so many big names fell so early. Um, but yeah, like part of the vibes kind of got a little tainted by the connection at the venue, where you had a lot of reviews, a lot of rematches, and a lot of situations where, as the viewer, so I was not able to attend it. I was essentially just viewing on Twitch.
Mhm.
I was kind of taken out of the action for up to 30 minutes at a point, just because there were a lot of game issues that were difficult to overcome and at times also really difficult to judge. I felt, in part because there were just so many fast attacks lost that it was difficult to determine which of those mattered and which didn't. And also in part because I think Soph mentioned it on the podcast that um, if like a Pokemon wrongfully wins charge attack priority, it's very difficult to actually grant a rematch based on that if those Pokemon are in the same ballpark in terms of attack stat, because it is actually not possible for a judge to really review the attack stat, the exact attack stat of the Pokemon without third party software. So it's very difficult to make definitive decisions, but that definitely took a little away from like both the viewing pleasure, but also I feel like from the competitors' enjoyment to a degree.
No, I mean, I think you nailed it. It was kind of like I don't know how you deal with stress, Zzweilous, but I know everyone has a different response. Some people like to make jokes, and that's definitely one of my approaches. If I'm like in pain or frustrated or something, if I get to a certain point, I just start to laugh about it. Um, there was a point during the broadcast when Caleb and Butters were coming in to take over from Soph and I. And Soph and I think on day one we covered like 5 disputes. That was basically the bulk of our casting, was just talking through disputes. And I remember Caleb said, "Oh yeah, well, you guys get all the disputes today, and we'll just go in and cast battles. So, ha, GGs." Like
Mhm.
made a joke about it. And I was like, "Man, you're really setting yourself up here." And then lo and behold, day two, Caleb and Butters had to cover like 2 different disputes. Haha. But anyways, I will say that we
Still a
had to cover.
competition, guys.
Yeah, right. We had to cover multiple disputes, and it felt like it was for different things each time. So the first and most obvious thing, and I know like we talk about this, like all of our listeners actually watch all the streams, they watch every broadcast, but sometimes they don't. And I think the number one thing that is most frequently talked about is the missed fast attack when you come in after a KO. We call it the one turn lag. And we've kind of been able to open up the bottleneck a bit on the broadcast. We can say the word lag. We can talk about the one turn delay, all that kind of stuff. But missing that fast attack can be so detrimental. And sometimes it doesn't really matter. I believe there's a nighttime clasher match where he came in against Pocket, lost a mud slap, and then realized he wouldn't have won anyway, so he didn't dispute it. But sometimes it can be really detrimental, especially to an end game. There was another match with I believe it was out of pocket again with Drapian taking on someone, and they missed a poison sting, and that one poison sting on the opposing Drapian could have turned into a whole different slew of win conditions. That just didn't happen. There was the desynced CMP between Dugong and Tomahawk UK. There was. I want to ask you about this actually. I know I mentioned a bunch of
Mhm.
examples, but I want to ask you about the mud slaps from Claydol from Nighttime Clasher versus the Alolan Sand Slash from Ilqm. I heard some people accusing that instance of being DRE. I believe it was 3 mud slaps and 4 shadow claws, but the ninth turn mud slap didn't apply, and instead the ice punch got fired off, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you remember that specific instance, but that was just basically that's just one example of all the bugs you're dealing with here.
Yeah, I don't actually remember the specific instance, but the way you laid it out, if there's 4 Shadow Claws into 3 Mudslaps, that's 8 turns into 9. The more likely outcome is the Sand Slash going down without the move firing, but if it does fire, we call that a damage registration error or DRE, which
Mhm.
then allows essentially the Sand Slash to still fire the move. And
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
essentially it's okay. If you knock out the Claydol, the move, the mud step doesn't even apply. If you don't knock out the Claydol with that, then the mud step goes through after.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that because that third mud slap, the fast attack damage applies on the final turn of the fast attack. So on turn 9, when the mud slap connected and did damage, that's when the ice punch was triggered as well. So to your point, sometimes you get the ice punch, sometimes you don't, and the DRE is another very disputable thing. But what was your perspective as a competitor, as a player who competes quite regularly? What did you see, and what were your thoughts? Because I can only say certain things, but you can speak your mind, my friend.
In terms of okay, in terms of the lag, um,
Yeah.
so I think what I took away from it was that a lot of the time the burden was put on either the players or the judges in a situation, or like either like the players had to go out of their way to dispute and to push for like a review or escalate to the head judge, and it just puts a lot of mental pressure, especially when you're the streamed game and especially when you might not have been in that situation too many times before, to really stand up for yourself and fight for yourself and really get the rematches granted that you deserve. I feel like there were multiple occasions where either the rematch wasn't even pressed for, even though there would have been a win condition, or where there was a rematch that was pressed for, or like a review that was pressed for, but the rematch wasn't granted. But if there was more time or the head judge had gotten involved, it probably would have gotten overturned, because sometimes like every judge is doing their best, but it's easy to still like miss a win condition, or maybe
Hmm.
like under the pressure, under the like if you're in a time crunch, if there's so many things to consider, like not every decision will be going the right way. And I think what the game should strive for, and what also Play Pokemon should strive for, is to make the situation as easy on both the judges and the competitors as possible. And I think like a very concrete example would be to just like um get together, like you don't even have to get together with like a third party source such as PvPoke, but like just talk to Niantic potentially, to like really have an official source for the CP combat point formula, and give the judges a tool to calculate the stats of a Pokemon based on IVs. It does go really fast. So a situation like a charge attack priority that fires off wrongly can be corrected, because in that situation, everybody was mad because it was obviously not the correct decision, but it was the correct decision by the rulebook because the judges are limited. And I feel like you need to give the judges all the tools you can give to them. And if we as a grassroots community have something like PvPoke, the official circuit should also have something like that, even if just to test the stats of a Pokemon and then determine the proper, like the game properly playing out.
Hmm.
Whereas the other point is just fix the game, as Marto would say on stage after winning a big event, where it's like the only way out of this is to not have it happen as frequently. It's as easy as that. And like I know there's still like people are never just accepting the current state of the game as a given, but things take time. So I'm hopeful that we will see changes, whether under Scopely or before, over time. But yeah, for now it's what we're stuck with. And yeah, we can just try and make the best of it. And like looking at the bracket, to go back to what we actually want to talk about, the PvP
Hmm.
part of it all, the players that emerged from this little bit of messy situation were essentially the top competitors that we did expect to emerge, like people that have the nerves, that can persist through just like hard times like that. So yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, it didn't decide the regional, but it was definitely like I wonder why Europe circuit isn't growing, even though in Europe the issues are far less common, whereas in the US the attendance explodes, which I want for every region, obviously. Even though you're in for such a hard time so often.
You know, Zzweilous, I think that the North America region is just on weapons grade copium. All right, we're like Scopely's gonna save us. Everything's gonna be
uh,
fine. Just keep competing,
Scopium.
keep signing up, and just keep smashing your head into a wall over and over again. It's like a dono wall in front of us, but we're just gonna keep on talking to it until those walls finally come down. I can tell you that at the regional, I asked as well. I asked like our incredible production team. I was like, can you give me like a hint? Is this the network? Is it the venue? Did they sell us on something that that we were supposed to get that we didn't get? And I was reassured multiple times that the network was functioning exactly as intended, that the capacity was there, the bandwidth was there, and basically it was not network. So yeah, it's definitely a shame, and it's really stressful. Like you said, on the judges and the players, it really like triggered me when I watched Rise win. I believe it was in Vancouver, right, with his Glycopod Shadow Stalix team. It really triggered me when he was in the grand finals against Haydonis, and he uh, he denied a fast move coming in, or a fast move didn't go through from Haydonis. So then Rise like paused and stopped playing for a moment and looked up at across at Haydonis and said, "Hey, I didn't tap or whatever." That really pissed me off, dude. I was like, "All right, if our actual players in the grand finals are handcuffing themselves because they don't trust the game and they don't want to dispute, then that's a real problem that we need to address." And we ranted about it, we complained about it, and I think we're going to keep complaining about it until it gets fixed. But yeah, I agree with your sentiment that you wrapped up with there. Some of the best players in the world were actually able to make that top cut. So even in spite of all the different, nasty weather they had to sail through, so to speak, we did have some really fun top cut trainers. Let's spotlight some teams, why don't we? Let's talk about, a little bit about some of the upset champs that I really loved watching. There were four in particular: Silent Beast with Talonflame and Furret. I really liked K-Pine's team with the Gastrodon. That was a really nice touch. Subtile Ice resurrecting Feraligatr and actually having a good time with that, outside of the occasional Shield Advantage Shadow Typhlosion. And then Firestar bringing Corviknight and actually showing some flashes with that. And El Carvissimo, playing the Shadow Typhlosion for its Superior and Corviknight team, as well as who can forget the other Typhlosion user in Dreyflames. So we had some really fun teams, man. This was a really fun tournament.
Yeah, I love how many different strategies are viable. And yeah, especially like there's so many Pokemon that like kind of do similar things but have their own little tweaks to the role that they fulfill. Maybe like we've been talking a lot about, oh, like now we really need to make that team building guide. Maybe we should maybe we should do like little info card about like three or so Pokemon that fill a very similar niche, a very similar role, and then like give the pros and cons to utilizing those. So people can maybe like at a glance check out, okay, which options do I have for what I want to do, and what's the benefits of all of that. Like one of the things
Mhm.
that really stood out to me was the Shadow Primeape that featured both on Silent Beast's team, but also on Ashton Ash's team, who was our third place finisher, another stellar performance by Ashton Ash. And I'm a known primate enjoyer. You know that. I did
Yep.
bring it to the European International Championships, but I opted for the non-shadow with Rage Fist and Close Combat. Whereas
Mhm.
these guys brought both the Shadow Primate, but also opted for Ice Punch as the coverage attack next to the Community Day move Rage Fist. So that accomplishes one very fun thing, which is beating the Shadow Jumpluff in all even shield scenarios, which is not a thing that a fighter typically does.
Yep.
But because you pace evenly to the Ice Punches and the Aerial Ace, and Shadow on Shadow, that double super effective move just takes the Jumpluff out. That is actually a way of really making people think twice about their Jumpluff play. And as somebody who is on Team Inadequates on this question of whether Jumpluff is a good or a bad Pokemon, I like it when Jumpluff gets proven bad. We don't talk about that Jumpluff actually won the entire thing.
Yeah. We'll just leave that as an aside. One team structure thing that I wanted to come back to was Ashton Ash's team. There were a lot of fun picks, right? A lot of really unique Pokemon. Mountain Dugong with Galarian Weezing, Dilap Trung with Shadow Blastoise, and Unova Stunfisk. A man after my heart there. But Ashton Ash's team, if we may, I just want to deep dive a little bit on this. Not only did my boy Ashton Ash bring back the Guzzlord from the pits of despair, he paired it with Corviknight, right? Really sick core. He had Sableye and, like you pointed out, the Shadow Primeape. And as you look at this team, he's got Azumarill, Shadow Primeape, Guzzlord, and Sableye. He needs the jump left coverage, and that's what he got
Yes.
with the Ice Punch on Primeape, the Sludge Bomb on Clodsire, and the Corviknight as well. What do you think about this team? Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the most successful Corviknight team that we have seen to date.
I think so too. And I do want to point out that the Sableye even had Power Gem, if I'm remembering correctly. So
I think
it's really
so.
like, okay, like my Guzzlord is kind of weak to the Jumpluff, my Primeape is kind of weak to the Jumpluff. I need a lot of creative ways of fighting back. Maybe let's put something on my Sableye as well. So people still did bring Jumpluff against Sash and Ash, but He really tried to at least give himself some outs, and I really like it when I feel like his playstyle was very aggressive, and you need to be very aggressive if you are a primate player because you can't ever really let yourself be down energy. Um, and yeah, I feel like he found a way of having this one very aggressive two shield through everything type of sweeper with other Pokemon that allowed him to just tank the hits, play neutrally, and really spread out the damage that his opponents could deal to him in a way that
Mhm.
it allowed his ace to shine. The ace obviously being the Primeape. Um, so yeah, I think this is also fairly similar to a team, like a general team composition that we did see during the I think Merida regionals. That's
Mm.
was just before EUIC, so still within the old meta. But that was essentially the first tournament where Covenant won a medal and saw somewhat widespread play. And it was also in that Primeape combination where you have like this
Mm.
fighting type with the steel bird, and they just really um, they kind of function well together as a core. I don't even know why exactly that is, because they do target somewhat similar Pokemon to a degree. Like you have the ground type coverage on Covenant with a sand attack, and like that hits Pokemon such as Alolan Sandslash, where you want your Primeape against, or even the Drapion is a solid matchup for the Primeape for the most part. So even though they do kind of target the same thing, I feel like they just enable their neutral play really well because the one is slow and tanky, whereas the other is frail and fast. And they just form a really good partnership. And it was very fun to see a team that had no Shadow Drapion. Like he was the only trainer out of the top six to not bring the Shadow Drapion to the event, which is kind of impressive in its
Mhm.
own right. And yeah, Ashton Ash definitely putting on a show here.
I honestly, as far as your recall always impresses me. Yeah, that was actually Merida Spartan L17 finishing fourth place with Corviknight and Shadow Primeape. He also had Chargebug, Galarian Corsola, Diggersby, and Azumarill. And another tie-in to that Merida event was that Ashton Ash was actually on the winner's side bracket in the grand finals and got the bracket reset and ultimately defeated by Marto. So very cool to see Ashton Ash not only competing in Merida, but also a little farther north in Atlanta, and actually maybe borrowing some things from his friends, right? Spartan L17, we know is part of Team 711, but Ash Nash credited Eomero, who's also a 711 gamer, for the inspiration for the team. Ash Nash basically said, "Hey, Eomero, I need a team. Tell me what I should play." Gave him the Corviknight team, and it worked out pretty well. And this was definitely the best Corviknight gameplay that I've seen so far. Switching it in, getting up energy, not ever using it as an aggressive lead, kind of using it as like a medium damage sponge, kind of an awkward Pokemon to deal with. To be truth be told, the Corviknight gameplay reminded me a lot of Dialab Trung's Shadow Blastoise gameplay. It's not dealing a lot of damage in his faster charge attacks. It's not really like hard winning matchups, but it's just like this wedge that you drive into this situation that you can buy yourself some time to think, or you can whittle down the opponent, kind of feel your way through the matchup. It's a very curious gameplay style, but I do think that
It's also like kind of a 50-second switch timer Pokemon, isn't it? Because you can just like
yes,
ring it in and live long enough that after a couple of charge moves you can swap out again and essentially reset the game state a little bit.
honestly, yeah, exactly right. That's a fantastic point. A 50-second switch timer Pokemon for sure. And I think that when you're playing like Ash Nash does, and as Butters called his gameplay, very non-linear, you're kind of leaving your Shadow Primeape in a Claydol matchup against Pocket and letting it get pretty weak, but you have Guzzlord in the back, and you really need switch advantage because Pocket's got an Azumarill, but you don't tell him that, you don't show him that by shielding early on. I think that Ash Nash did a lot of very subtle things that were really, really unique and different, and it really speaks to his depth and his bag, so to speak, as a player. So, and are there any other teams that you want to shout out to? For example, I don't know how El Semi just hammered Furret for like 10 rounds in this tournament and somehow finished fifth, because Furret looked super underwhelming, especially in those matchups. But I don't know if you agree or
I
disagree.
almost think that I almost expected for it to go further because it looks so good into a lot of the Pokemon, especially if this is another point to make. Like we've seen Alolan Sandslash on both sides of the grand finals, as well as on every team from fifth to eighth place. And because the winning Sandslash is actually on Shadowclaw, I feel like that could maybe help the prevalence of Furret going forward, because
Mm.
that Shadowclaw fast attack makes that matchup favorable as well for the normal type. Whereas against other teams, like you can still save swap a Furret against out of pocket. You'll find positive matchups against Sableye, against Azumarill, against Claydol, and then you'll
Mhm.
find playable matchups against Alolan Sandslash against Drapion. Those are like slightly negative. Whereas I think the Cradily matchup, once there's shield investments, you just win that as the Furret. So I think it's just such a flexible Pokemon, and I honestly expect more rather than less for it in the regionals going forward.
Mhm.
Except for if we see a big uptick in Tinkaton, because that is not fun for a Sucker Puncher that does normal and grass type damage.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking as well. I'm like, well, if it's gonna play, it better play in Monterey because I don't think that post Monterey it will be as prominent. We've kind of alluded to this a few times. There were some pretty interesting ice type Pokemon that finished within the top cut here. Um, and I gotta say, six out of the top eight players running Alolan Sandslash. We alluded to this a couple times in the show earlier. Is this the return of the Slash?
I just know that Homeslice Henry is somewhere pulling his hair out because this is his enemy number one. He just feels as if this Pokemon is so rock, paper, scissors. But
Yeah.
if you look at the top eight, how many fighters do we have? We have like one fighter in the Shadow Primate. I feel like
Mhm.
that's just it. And then you have how many fire types? Oh, zero. So how RPS is Shadow Sandslash really, especially if you have that Shadow Claw? To maybe make the Lapras matchup better, to make the Azumarill matchup better. Um, I feel like right now it's just a Pokemon that either has neutral play or that has really great play as a core breaker. And people have been abusing that really, really well. And I think we will see more Alolan Sandslash success in tournaments going forward, especially because, unlike for it does have its outs against the Tinkaton with the drill run coverage.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I feel like Sandslash is here to stay, and with the state of the meta being what it is, it's, I would say, the strongest non-Azumarill Drapion Pokemon in the meta right now.
Wow, top 3 for the Slash, huh? Yeah, honestly, I agree, and if you look at it, yeah, you're resisting the Lapras Psy Waves, you're dealing super effective damage to Claydol, you're walling opposing Fairy types, you can, match pacing more or less with Sableye. I mean, Sandslash looks serious, and you're exactly right. The lack of fire, the lack of fighting, there's so many openings for it. Seeing it on 6 out of 8 top teams, again, this is just another reason why, as you alluded to, the Clodsire, excuse me, the Swalot and Guzzlord core is basically kaput at this point. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess let's talk a couple of storylines. Nighttime Clasher had a really good run. Again, congratulations to Nighttime Clasher for signing on with Luminosity Gaming. I was able to call him NTCLG at one point during the broadcast, but I think it is Luminosity Gaming Nighttime Clasher, which is a little bit of a mouthful. I saw a really sick promo poster that LG posted for Nighttime Clasher going into the event. It was a Toga Demaru in like the super epic, high contrast, low light, dramatic style, and it looked really, really sick. So Nighttime Clasher had an incredible tournament run, and I know he wants more. I know he wants to win an event this season, so he will continue to compete. Dilap Chong from Canada doing so well with Unova Stunfisk. We first saw it with Anacor playing Mandibuzz Unova Stunfisk, I believe at an EU regional, if I'm not mistaken. And then Dilap takes it up a level with the Shadow Blastoise. And then Tomahawk UK with the Alola Ninetales, which I think nobody saw coming. That was a bold call, and it turned out to pay off pretty well for him. So very nice picks. And yeah, this is like last thing I'll say. This top eight is a lot of what we expect the top eights to look like, but the bottom eight, Dre Flames, Firestar, Sceptile Ice, Just Dirk, Silent Beast. These are the trainers that upset, Rise, Dunebug, Elite, Wadaj. and made their way into day two, which is really sick. And I love to see new trainers coming up and performing really well.
Yeah, I have a lot to say on all of those actually.
Okay.
Like not all of those like literally, but a bunch of shout outs that I do want to make. First of all, Dijon the Jin, long time big community presence, occasionally judging as well, and I feel like I've known him first, like obviously as Dijon the Jin, but
Uh-huh.
also he was just called Spicy for a little while. That was just his name, and that was because he liked to run cradily before it
Yes.
was Meta. I feel like we have to rename the guy now. His name is Meta now, just because Credilli is Meta. It's not Spicy any longer. If your name changes by like the status of Cradley, it can't be Spicy anymore. But still, like
Mm.
it's always lovely to see if you like have a community member that has a signature Pokemon, and all of a sudden that signature Pokemon becomes good. It's I feel like there's probably no better feeling, and I'm really awaiting the advent of Shadow Sharpedo finally defining the meta next season. Um, so that was a fun top cut to see.
Mm.
Um, the dial-up top eight blink twice if the Blastoise next to you made you shout out that run. But no, honestly, I'm really glad that dial-up is a trainer who doesn't shy away from running the non-obvious picks, because not only
Mm.
do we not have a Shadow Drapion on his team, he also doesn't have an Azumarill, which is
Good call.
actually the only top eight player to accomplish a run like that without an Azumarill, which I think is pretty impressive. And for NTC, I think the storyline, other than him just getting fifth place 3 times in a row, was his brother Sustenance Eater actually
Mm.
taking names and having a very impressive day one performance. Not quite punching his way into top card just yet, but I feel like that is maybe the next Luminosity gamer on his way already. Because now we have NTC, we have his girlfriend Tihirisa, and we have Sustenance Eater all as a presence and a threat in those brackets. And I love how that's just like almost like a little family project, just upsetting
Yep.
people at regionals at this point. Um, and yeah, we did get a rematch between NTC and Tomahawk UK, which is actually his grand finals opponent from the Liverpool regional that he did end up winning.
Hmm.
Um, and again, it was NTC knocking down the European invader. But Tomahawk did end up having the last laugh, finishing fourth ahead of Eric and
Mm.
taking that medal. His I think second medal this year. His second in North America as well. He competed 7 times, 4 times of those in North America. So
Woo.
that's actually Tomahawk US for you.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the direction that he's trending. I really like that you pointed out Sustenance Eater. I saw that NTC posted online and said that Sustenance Eater is going to follow his trajectory, so he will likely be a regional champion before the year is up. And I'm really really excited to hear that because
I love
that
the
would be insane.
confidence. Like I'm always here
Oh
for
yeah.
somebody making a bold prediction like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like NTC believes he has a formula. You know, he improves so quickly. He's a student of the game in every shape and sense of the
He's
word.
also a
And
coach of the game, and
yes,
yeah, has helped others succeed for sure.
exactly. So I would really love to see Sustenance Eater continue to climb, and that also kind of it breaks down a big wall that I feel like a lot of the long term Pokemon Go players have felt build up over these years is the fact that the game's tough. It's not very accessible. There's no guides. There's no rules about how to learn. So seeing a trainer actually pick up the game within a year or so and actually have a lot of success is a really, really good sign for us. You don't have to play all the events dating back 3 years to have the right shadows or to have the right XLs or whatever. You can actually just compete at a high level, with less prep time. I think that's really, really important to know. It looks like Tomahawk UK is currently fifth overall on the EU CP leaderboards with
I
1,433 points. I don't know if the Atlanta points have been dialed in here, but
think they
ZZ,
have
he's
been.
catching up to you. You're at 1695. He's right on your heels.
I just need to come top eight. As long as I come top eight, I'm happy, because that will mean World's Travel Award for me. And
Uh,
I feel like I'm in a decent enough spot, especially now that some of the casters for the upcoming events have been released, and I know that Martijn and Adequance, who is like one of those trainers who already has a good amount of championship points but hasn't competed at as many tournaments yet.
Mhm.
Like he'll be casting, I think, both Seville and NAIC, which means
Mm.
that at those two occasions, he's not going to catch up to me.
You're safe.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
like one of those where I was like calculating a little bit, like, okay, like Palasha is probably going to pass me, Martin is probably going to pass me.
Mm.
But no, I feel like I can hold on to
I
that
mean,
place I'm currently holding.
Inadequance is currently in 10th place with 1,270 points. So he's still like 400 points below you. And then Apollo's is slightly below him at 1180. So she's got a lot of work to do as well. So I don't know. I mean, they maybe if they win a tournament and they shoot up 350 points, maybe that'll
Yeah,
put
yeah,
them
yeah. Like
within
I think
range.
if those guys do like play another event, it's fairly likely that they do a top eight. So
Mm.
I don't want to celebrate too early, is what I'm saying.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, let's go ahead and we've already talked about the trainers, talked about a few different storylines. We mentioned the bugs as well that people had to deal with. I feel like we would be doing a huge disservice if we don't talk about the grand finals because we talked about Shadow Drapion here and there. This grand finals, in particular from Ilqm, felt like a Shadow Drapion masterclass. I don't know if I've ever seen anyone execute quite like he did, and the most frustrating part for Pocket, as a player and as a viewer, is that Pocket also played really, really well. I don't think Pocket made a lot of mistakes. He played his game. He's one of the best in the world. He's shown us that dozens of times, and it just felt like no matter how cleanly he played or no matter how well he played, Ilqm just was one step ahead. Um, as a outside spectator, I could feel the energy in the venue when I was watching in person. But I'm curious what you thought, looking through the screen, watching from afar. What did you think about this grand finals?
So in my notes, I have the sentence Ilum best Shadow Drapion player in the world. So
Yeah.
I feel like we've identified the same star of the show. And not only did Ilum execute really well in those games, like oftentimes farming up with the Drapion, then just swapping out, banking a move to use that for a combo play later, just always having that threat of the charge attack loaded in the back, influencing Pocket's shielding decisions, and just like always dictating the pace of the game. He also had two very important advantages in the head-to-head matchup if you look at the teams, because the teams are fairly similar.
Mm,
With like the Azumarill Drapion core being obviously the big one, but there's also the Alolan Sandslash, which looks pretty good into each team as well. Um, and then like the Claydol is identical, and then they just have Lapras on Elam's side, Shadow Sableye on Pocket's side, and then the grass type of choice is Shadow Jumpler for Elam and Credily for Pocket. And um, the two important factors that made Elam's matchup more favorable were first, he had the Drapion that won charge attack priority over Pocket's Drapion. I think with such an important and such a safe Pokemon, that is just super, super crucial in those matchups where you find yourself in mirror match situations a lot of the
mhm,
time. Not only if you're stuck in that matchup from the get go, but also if you just want to bank a move and do like a charged attack priority play in the end game. If you just know that you win that, you're in such a better spot. Um, and then the other difference maker was that Pockets and Elam's Sand Slashes actually had different fast moves. So Pocket probably felt that with the Sableye and the Credilli on his team, he had better answers versus opposing Lapras. So he didn't feel the need to put Shadow Claw on his Alolan Sand Slash. Whereas Elam, with the less clear cut answers in Jumpluff and his own Lapras, a Lapras that didn't run Skull Bash, if I remember correctly. He felt as if he
mm.
needed to run the Shadow Claw on his Alolan Sand Slash. And now in this exact head-to-head matchup, Pocket, like for the bulk of the series, he didn't even bring the Alolan Sand Slash, because it has a worse matchup into Azumarill without Shadow
Yeah.
Claw, has a worse head-to-head matchup without Shadow Claw. Um, and it has a worse Lapras matchup without Shadow Claw. That is three matchups that, if you don't outright give them up, you are significantly worse into. So Ilum was bold enough to, I think, run Shadow Drop you on Shadow Jumpluff Core not once, but at least two times, if I remember correctly. And those Pokemon leading into an Alolan Sandslash, that just loses you the game. You have no way of coming back from that. But
True.
Ilum still felt confident enough because his team comp had that pressure against the Powder Snow version specifically. Um, so yeah, I feel like those little details in what seems like a mirror match actually tip the scales into Elam's favor a good amount. But then the other aspect obviously was just flawless play, just like always managing the energy perfectly. Whenever Pocket was pulling in a Zoom roll safe swap, Elam just farmed up energy against bubbles, which do next to nothing, and then brought in his own Alolan Sandslash to sponge all the charge attack energy. So just like really always optimizing his plays, and like you like to say, he never left a matchup empty handed. And I feel like that was on full display in those grand finals between like two of the absolute greats of the game.
Yeah.
I feel like there's no way around acknowledging that and celebrating that. But yeah, like Elam between just perfect mechanics and understanding of his team composition, and then just like those little details in how his Rapion and Sandslash managed to put in work. That was just too much to overcome, even for someone like Pocket.
We talked a few times during the broadcast about how Ashton Ash really wanted that rematch versus Out of Pocket, which of course is a rematch from our NAIC Grand Finals last season, and he had to get through Nighttime Clasher to do it. And if you look at Nighttime Clasher's team, it's actually identical to what we had from Out of Pocket. So we were focused a lot on Ashton Ash and his prep to take on Pocket, but what about Elam's prep in order to take on Pocket? Because if you look at the bracket as well, Elam did take on a very similar team to Pocket in Nighttime Clasher as well. So not only do we have Ash Nash kind of getting 2 rounds or 2 attempts at taking down this team, Elam did as well. So Elam had a really incredible set versus Nighttime Clasher earlier on in the tournament. I remember that final game came down to the two Alolan Sand Slashes that you pointed out, Powder Snows from Nighttime Clasher versus the Shadow Claws from Elam, reaching that charge tech party tie Ice Punch and Elam winning it. And then that Ice Punch being enough to bring down the Sand Slash and win him that series. That was honestly a thrill. That was probably the most hype moment that I experienced. Butters was so loud in the casting booth that everyone in production and backstage could hear him, even without the microphone. He was belting out his cast, so it was insane. So yeah, I think that this is really a testament, not only like you said, the perfect flawless execution on the Drapion, recognizing your moveset nuances and your team comp nuances that could give you a slight edge, and then kind of playing the odds as well. And we saw Elam play the odds quite aggressively in the series earlier against Tomahawk, where he was safe swapping his jump bluff into a Powder Snow Alolan Ninetales team that was absolutely diabolical, and I called that out multiple times on the cast with Soph. But it just goes to show you that Elam is a trainer that can be so diverse and so multifaceted in his approach. He can gamble huge against Tomahawk, and then he can come in against Pocket and just refine, execute, shave off the additional 5 to 10%, and just clean out 6 wins in a row, arguably 7 if we include the rematch, right? 7 wins in a row, and just
Also,
sweep the
like
grand finals.
that is just games, but if you look at like the series that he won just back to back to back to back, he started the day two on the loser's side. This is such a huge run once
Ooh,
again, and the only opponent that he did lose to in the entire tournament was actually Ashton Ash in the winners finals on day one. So actually, like that was a very close fought series as well. That was a 2-1 victory for Ashton Ash. But yeah, just like seeing what went wrong the first time and then just recovering, doing it better, and just having that stamina to like that mental sharpness too, to never really count yourself out, always like like he went into the grand finals just like saying like, I know that I'm one of the best players in the world, and I feel like that's the attitude that you need to have if you go up against someone like Pocket.
yeah. Speaking of the grand finals, pre-interview, man, that was more trash talk than I think we've ever gotten on the show. And yeah,
Some
I've got
great
so much
faces
love.
pulled too. That was very meme worthy. I love that.
Yeah, yeah. I've got so much love and adoration both for Pocket and Elam, but just sitting next to Pocket and watching him with the microphone, right? It's like, do you guys want to say anything to each other before you go up onto the stage? I know you'll talk in the headsets, but what do you want to say right now? And Pocket just deadpan turns to Elam. He's like, I'm sorry, bro. You're not going to win. I was like, whoa, whoa. You know,
Yeah.
that's not like, hey man, you suck and you know, you're going to get destroyed. He didn't say anything like that, right? Of course, but this is a Pokemon stream, right? And it was really, really shocking on the C2C Pocket. Just call him out. And Elam said, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I was like, bruh, bruh.
Like
That was
this
a bro
is
moment.
honestly like I've been in that situation a couple of times myself, and I've never like dared to do anything but like talk my opponent up and like acknowledge
Yeah.
their run up until this point. But I wish I had the guts to just go out there and say something like that. Like, obviously, you need to kind of have the rapport with the person that you're facing to not have this come off as condescending, because I don't think it did in Pocket's
No,
case. It was just
no.
like very good fun between two top competitors that really see eye to eye. But yeah, it's good to have those moments and to have like people that want to be the main character. And I feel like we were like it definitely elevated the viewing experience for all of us.
It was so good. I saw that Pocket posted on socials as well that it looks like he is flying down to Monterey to
Yes.
compete. So he's not waiting at all. I mean, seriously, on Saturday morning, I know Pocket's first flight got canceled. So Saturday morning, he arrives. I'm walking up to the venue. I see Pocket get out of the Uber and run up to the door, right? Straight from the airport, straight into the venue, no breaks, and actually, you know, make it all the way to the grand finals. He's going down to Mexico as well, which I cannot wait to see. But speaking of long roads, Elam's day two run that you alluded to, I just want to list this off because this is staggering. Coming in to day two on the loser side bracket, one of the only trainers I believe to ever win the entire tournament after starting on the loser side. Dunebug 97 also comes to mind at San Antonio. Elam defeated Silent Beast, Dre Flames, Mountain Dugong, Nighttime Clasher, Tomahawk, Ashton Ash, and then Pocket twice in order to win this tournament. That is no mistake. That is no error. That is no oversight. That is pure, utter talent and domination on display.
That's such an incredible gauntlet. Like
Wow.
I don't know, like just this is why I try to not lose early, because like those losers fans, they look so daunting. I've never been able to pull something like that off.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, like also, um, so like I have been on the loser side before. Don't get me wrong, and sometimes
Ah.
I got to like string like 3 or 4 successful sets together, and you do feel after a certain time as if you're just in the zone a little more, because like you're always back against the wall. You get a lot of practice in with your team, which is kind of nice, because like you'll always go into a tournament if you are a top competitor, just like kind of knowing what you're doing, obviously.
Mhm.
But you still learn. Like every repetition that you get in, it just allows you to just see something that you didn't see before. Um, and this can be very helpful. So especially with like the Pocket team and the Nighttime Clasher team being identical, um, maybe it's just helpful to get those reps in, to know what you can expect, to know what you can do against it,
Mhm.
and just really be warmed up as best as possible. And yeah, I feel like that upset, like he prepared it really, really well that day to run.
There's one word that I use to describe Elam. I believe this is as far back as 2023. I always used to call Elam gritty. He's a very gritty player, and what I mean is just that sometimes you can see trainers make it to that next round, and they're on the loser side bracket, and they go up on stream, and maybe their body language isn't all there, and maybe they're kind of like looking defeated, or they kind of react when things don't go their way, and you can see the crash out coming, right? And other trainers, you know, try really hard, and you just feel like they're giving it their all. But Elam just seems to be like the same temperature, the same pace, the same tempo. Winner side bracket, loser side bracket, sunshine or rain does not change. Elam is always level. He's always calm, and he's always like very, very direct with his approach. But man, It doesn't matter if Elam's down 0-2 or 0-3, or I guess 0-2 is as far down as he could go. 0-2 in a set of five, he always just looks the same. So measured, so composed. And yeah, I mean, he's got that self belief, and he's not a very vocal guy. You're not going to get a lot of cheering and hollering from Elam. We did get the raised fist in Atlanta, which is I
There
think the
were some
most we've
good
got.
edits of that. I enjoyed those.
Oh, yeah, I saw the one with the goat as his head, and then the small banner picture has a goat with his hair, which is pristine, absolutely pristine S tier edit. But yeah, Elam's a star. Pocket is too. I fully expect Pocket to bounce back and crush, whether it's Monterey or an upcoming event. And Ashton Ash, dude, I want Ashton Ash to win an event, man. He's been close to the grand finals, or he's been in the grand finals twice, once in an IC, once in a regional. He made third place at this tournament. I mean, Ashton Ash is due as well.
Like at some point, it's just about like spamming events, just eliminating variance, right? Because
Mhm.
there's always something that can go wrong, but over time you will see what your current baseline kind of is, especially if you like really try to um prepare for those events and really be at your best, play at your best, and then you'll see, okay, like this is the ballpark of what I can reach if I'm really on my A game. And there's always like, oh, if I'm playing super well, then I could be like, I don't know, like top 16, or I can make it into a grand finals. And with Ash and Ash, his baseline is so high already that as long as he keeps attending, he will make it. And that essentially goes for everybody, no matter the skill level. If you feel as if, like, okay, if I just get one lucky run, or like just I've been there kind of, but I've not quite reached
Mhm.
what I want to reach just yet. Just keep doing it, because and every time you go out of a tournament, there were like little bits and pieces, little details that could have gone your way, and it would have been even better. So
Mhm.
just keep believing in yourself. Like you probably know what you can do, and you know that it's like so close so many times. It's not a hard wall. It's not a hard barrier that you can't break through. This goes for everybody,
Mhm.
and I think Ashton Ash is like one of the most prominent examples. And I think Tomahawk UK is as well. Like so this is one another of those sentences that I wrote down, um, which is in terms of highlight play, Tomahawk UK was the best competitor at the tournament. It just also had the worst team of the top four because anyway, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
like I feel like there were moments where he like waited a turn to force a charge attack priority tie to then like soft lose a matchup and get a farm down while wasting his opponent's energy. That it's like those players are at such a high level, and even though they don't have the
Mhm.
in-game shirt, they don't have the gold medal, they will get there. They just need to keep trying. And I don't know whether it takes them another year or just another event, but
Yeah.
yeah, I just feel as if we'll all be here to celebrate once they break through. And Ilqm is the best example because he was the one guy who was always like top five but couldn't win a regional. Now he's
Mhm.
like the only North American player in this season that won two regional events already.
Yeah. I honestly I couldn't have said it better. I sincerely agree with what you said. Sometimes things just click in competitive gameplay, whether it's Pokemon Go or any other game that you might play. Yeah, it's like it's one of those strange things where like all of the base. Okay, I'm gonna tie this into another thing. All of the base properties are there, right? You've trained really hard. You know your counts. You know your matchups. You're prepared. You understand the meta. All those base level things are there, and then there's just like this flow state, this click that you get into. It's almost like Zzweilous when Goku took on Frieza, and he trained so hard in the capsule on the way to Namek, and he beat everyone else, and then he came up against his final opponent, which imagine Frieza right now, but there's like a gold medal on his head instead. That's like the final threshold to cross, and he tried his best and just almost got there until that one breakthrough moment. Rest in peace, Krillin. Although he didn't stay dead for long, Goku turned Super Saiyan, and then everything just flowed from there, and absolutely just masterclass that fight. Shout out to all of our Dragon Ball fans who are listening. But it really does feel that way. I mean, it felt that way for me 5 years ago in Sylph when everything was clicking and people that would scrim against me were just saying, "Yeah, I can't beat him." Like there's just something different about this point in the season and in the career. And I'm sure you felt that way as well, going through your regional competitions where everything just comes together. And I agree with you. I think Ilqm is a great testament to keep trying and you will succeed. And these other trainers are just waiting their turn. And it's really exciting to see kind of like three tiers of trainers, right? Your champions that always show up, your Collins of the world, your Martos of the world. And then you got trainers like Ashton Ash, who's right on the threshold, Ilqm, who's finding more consistency, Dialab, Tomahawk. And then below them, you've got up and comers like Just Dirk and Firestar and Yetaruna, and very, very talented trainers that are breaking through slowly. So very, very exciting stuff. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to say about Atlanta because it was an incredible tournament.
I think I have a little segment prepared
All right.
that dives a little into the viability of certain Pokemon. Let me see whether I can pull it up. This will probably not be graphically represented. Maybe like we should hire an editor to now put these
Ooh.
Pokemon on the stream. I don't want to get ahead of myself. This is our first YouTube episode. But yeah, so like one shout out that I do want to make is that Elam actually brought the Azu Drapion core to all of his grand finals games. I do want to mention that, and I feel like we should probably look at targeting that exact core for the events going forward. But enough of gameplay feedback for Atlanta. We have a segment
Uh,
called Fraud Watch. Speedy, we all love it. We all know it. Like there's whether it's like an athlete or just a Pokemon in the competitive championship series. Like they have high hopes, high expectations. Everybody's eyes are on them, but then maybe they fall short a little. They don't quite cut it. They might not actually win the event that they were touted to win. But
uh,
I have brought to you. I've brought today six Pokemon that all top cuts. The Atlanta Regional Championship, but they haven't quite made it all the way. And I want to ask you whether you think those Pokemon have what it takes to really shine, to really carve out not only a niche in the meta, but take home a gold medal and be the best choice for what they do as well. Not just be like, okay, like a good player can do like the Inadequance Palkia approach, where you just put that on the team and play with the other five Pokemon. So
all right.
yeah, I have six Pokemon, and I'll hit you with the first one.
Okay.
Um, Shadow Typhlosion. We saw that place ninth twice in Atlanta, and it has won a championship before in Stuttgart, actually, on PvP David's team. But in this new Might and Mastery meta, do you think Shadow Typhlosion would be able to repeat that feat?
So what are our possible answers here? Obviously, one of them is fraud. Is the inverse of that like legit, like contender? What should we say here?
I think it's just fraud, yes or no. That's what
Oh,
we're dealing with here.
I would say 90% fraud.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not
Mm,
a Thai believer.
so I think fire Pokemon are actually fairly interesting just because they're like one of the ways of dealing with Alolan Sandslash and also potentially the Tinkaton that might be coming to a
Or
play Pokemon tournament near you.
or an occasional Shadow
And
Blastoise played by Dialab Trong. I don't know.
this is true. And like Typhlosion is the one Pokemon that is able to beat water types in certain scenarios while being a fire type itself. So it definitely has things going for it, especially also because it paces so fast to the Thunder Punches with Talonflame and Skeledirge having their cheapest move at 45 energy, but Typhlosion with the Thunder Punch at 40, meaning it's just two Incinerates. And I will actually say Shadow Typhlosion, obviously it has a niche. It's not a very spammable Pokemon because it has such a attack weighted stat distribution. But I think it's legit. I think it can win a tournament. I don't think it's a fraud.
All right. I
But
mean, there are
I like
there are
that we have
tons of targets.
disagreements. I like that we have disagreements.
I
So,
will. Oh, go ahead. Go
mhm.
ahead.
No, you go ahead. No,
I was just going to say, I will say that I disagree with you about Claydol, and I came around. I came to my senses on Claydol. I do think it is very good. Looking at the rest of the teams, there are a lot of targets for Shadow Typhlosion, but one caveat I want to offer to just conclude
Mhm.
my fraud decision here is the fact that with Tinkaton arriving, we're going to see more grounds and likely more poisons too. And I do think there are obstacles for Typhlosion to beat additional ground types and poisons. Anyways, as you're saying.
Um, what if the ground type is Klotza and you can actually win that matchup with Typhlosion? But
Oh my
I'll let you
god.
have the point. I'll let you have the point. Mudslappers are actually very unfortunate for our Johto friend. Let's stick with the starters.
Okay.
Let's pet your plushie next to you and
Hmm.
ask yourself the question whether Shadow Blastoise is. Oh God, he has so many of them. Um, let's ask ourselves the question of whether Shadow Blastoise has what it takes to win a big event.
um Honestly, I think Eddie played it incredibly well. It looked very, very inspired. It looked very fun, but it's still I feel like it's one of those wedge Pokemon that you kind of throw in there. It does damage. It kind of eats up the switch timer, but I don't think that it showed enough to me where I feel like this is a contender. This is the next thing. This is a Pokemon that is going to shoot up in usage. I think Blastoise will remain fringe at least for the next 2 months. I'd say it's on fraud watch for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I have it as a fraud as well. My
Yeah.
reasoning being that with rollout, you generate 13 energy per fast attack, so you'll end up at 39 energy after three rollouts. But Hydro Cannon is exactly 40 energy, so it's like the most inefficient Pokemon there is. Plus, you struggle against Pokemon like Claydol that, if you are a water type, you would really like to beat the most prevalent Mud Slapper. But because of the resisted rollouts, it's just not a great time because you don't have that fast attack pressure. You always need two moves.
Yeah.
And again, like your pacing is not what you would like it to be, given that you're a charge attack oriented Pokemon. So I love
Yeah.
that I got to see Shadow Blaster's action on stream. But I think most tryhards, quote unquote, will just opt for Azumarill or Lapras, and therefore Blastoise is unlikely to make it.
Amen.
Um,
Yeah.
okay, this is a very interesting one. Do you believe that Corviknight, after taking third place in Atlanta, the biggest North American regional of all time, to date, it's going to change with Monterey, um, which is really fun.
Yeah.
Does it have what it takes to win a big event, or is third as far as high as it can go?
This Pokemon is actually the number one pick that I had in terms of up and comers, core breakers, for example, meta breakers going into the leg of the season. I think what Ashton Ash showed us with Corviknight was honestly incredible. I think if you're looking for a Jumpluff answer, if you want a Tinkaton answer, the only shield scenario that Corviknight loses to Tinkaton is going to be the 0 to 2 shields. Everything else is blue across the board. You look at anywhere from a 629 win rating in the 0 to 1s versus a 900 win rating when you're up just
Yikes.
1 to 0. It's honestly staggering how much this Pokemon destroys Tinkaton, which is also super contrary to the lore, right? But
It's true.
that point aside, Corviknight's my number one pick actually to succeed in the upcoming weeks. I think Corviknight is going to win a championship before Might and Mastery is done.
I like that take. I like that take, especially because I've always been Team Corviknight, but I still have it on fraud watch. I will
Oh.
change that as soon as it gets like a little tweak to its pacing, because I think just having to wait for so long until you even get to utilize your very underwhelming Iron Head, it's just, I think it's something, it's an aspect of Corviknight's gameplay that, with where the meta currently is, with how the power creep enabled Pokemon like Sableye to just pace so quickly, players like Out of Pocket will just exploit that 10 times out of 10.
Hmm.
Um, so I feel as if Corviknight's ceiling is that metal. I don't believe it has what it takes to really go all the way, especially because Corviknight teams typically rely on its roll compression a lot. And once you have to bring it every time, but you have somebody who just runs more meta Pokemon that have that better pacing, I just don't think you can take it all the way. I would love to be proven wrong though. And like I wonder whether there'll ever be like a little bit of an energy adjustment to Iron Head, because I feel like that would be a safe attack to buff. It's only really seen on Master League Dialga,
Mm,
and that thing being too strong is like 2021 lore. I feel like we have
true.
power crept our way out of the Dialga meta. So
I
maybe in the
agree.
future, but right now Covenant's still on front watch. Okay, let's move to a Pokemon that is very near and dear to my heart, the Furret. Are you one of the Furret doubters or are you a Furret believer, Speedy?
That's a really good question. One final aside I just want to make. I looked up Ironhead in the Great League, and your top users are number 12 Corviknight, number 28 Pangoro, which honestly, when's the
What?
last time you
Oh yeah,
even
okay,
saw
okay,
Pangoro?
not as its default moveset. Okay, okay,
No,
okay.
it's in the kit somewhere. And then it
Yeah.
slides all the way down to number 218 with Berserker. So I'm right on board with you. I think Ironhead is prime for a buff, and it can make a big difference for Corviknight. Your question at hand is Furret. Dude, Furret is firmly on the fraud watch. All right. This Pokemon, I don't even know how Semi hammered it to the point that he did, where he finished fifth. I didn't like watching it play. I didn't like imagining myself playing it. I did not feel like Furret was the sauce. It felt like the opposite. It was like, boiled bland chicken with white rice. It was just bleh.
So if Tinkaton becomes a meta-defining Pokemon, I think you would be correct. Right now, at this moment in time, and going into the Monterey regionals, if I was attending, I would have for it on 10 out of 10 teams that I would build. I think it is so good
Wow.
in the right hands. It was one of my MVPs during the prize tournament just a month ago, where I paired it with Shadowclaw, Alolan Sandslash, and Azumarill for like half of my games. And it honestly, it did so well. I know that Guzzlord is kind of falling out of favor, and maybe more people are catching on to the Shadowclaw Sandslash tech. I just feel as if Furret stocks are on the rise.
Wow.
They will keep crashing down as soon as Tinkaton is eligible and good. But right now, I think for it is fantastic, and I think that um, it coming fifth at Atlanta was like the least that I expected from for it. I think it's so good, actually.
Wow.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
like I don't know whether this will age as well as my Cladle predictions, but I have very strong opinions on for it. It
Yeah.
walks, it runs, it trailblazes. Big fan.
Well,
Okay,
it's go ahead.
okay. I was like, if you have more to say on for it, I just like if it's more slender, we can move ahead. But
Oh,
um,
okay, okay. No. It's not slander. I just want to say, all the openings you pointed for Alone Sandslash, for example, lack of fighters, lack of fire types as well. Furret benefits from that. Just simultaneously, according with the Alone Sandslash, excuse me, because there are very few fighters. There's basically no Annihilate, the occasional Primate. Fighting is, or, excuse me, normal is only weak to fighting. That's its only weakness. So it's neutral into basically everything. I think where you run into trouble is when you're up against steel types, fairy types. Those Pokemon can be really frustrating. But please proceed.
all right, our penultimate fraud or not fraud is actually a Pokemon that we've talked about it already as something that now is firmly meta. But I think there was another PvP Steve graphic with the Pokemon that have had the most top 8 placements without ever actually winning. And the Pokemon on top of that list is Cradily. Is
Mm.
that because it can't ever do it and it's actually a fraud? Or have we just not seen the right tournament, the right moment for Cradily? It's been like consistently good. Does it have what it takes, or is it just like overrated and will drop down now that it hasn't seen the initial success?
I think historically in competitive Pokemon Go, we've talked about grass types as being powerful, although alignment dependent. They struggle against ice, they struggle against fire. We talked about rock type Pokemon basically being not even on the radar. Rock and electric, all the other types are playing competitively: steel, water, poison, ice, whatever. Rock and electric are like sitting off to their own. Like nobody wants to touch those Pokemon really. And we thought that Cradilly was going to get a new dawn because we actually had a grass type that could beat fires, could beat certain ice types. But I just feel like it's been super underwhelming. That Pokemon has been picked a ton. It has not done uh, that well in my mind. But I want to note though that it did finish second overall in Atlanta. I believe Pocket was playing it, and he did a really good job with it. Nighttime Clasher also playing it. But outside of that, I don't know if you have the choice between Cradilly and Jump Bluff. I think you take the extra bulk. I think you take the extra resistance to fighting, and I think that you take the extra damage output. Um, for me, I don't know. Cradilly was the hot thing because Rock Tomb got buffed, and Rock Tomb is overpowered as hell. But I don't think it's gonna win an event this season.
Oh, I love that take because I honestly felt as if this was the Pokemon that was most clearly in the not a fraud category. And I wanted to surprise you by calling it a fraud because I don't believe in Cradily whatsoever. I think Bullet
No,
Seed is so bad. I think
yeah,
the pacing is so awkward. I've been calling people just throwing on alignment to get the debuff off quickly. Like, I've been calling them out for Cradily timing. This is like,
so cringe.
I just like obviously you have the stats, you have good charge attacks, but I feel like it's so exploitable to have that fairly bad fast attack and the fairly bad typing. And it's not going to get better if more people just run Alolan Sandslash, if more people run Tinkaton, it's just I don't think great times are ahead for Credilli, especially
Mhm.
because like what is the initial answer to arise in steel types? Probably more fighting types. And also that would not be amazing for Credilli. So yeah, I do have Credilli at the like in the fraud category.
Yep.
And let's see whether our last Pokemon for today is also going to slot in that dishonorable category. This is a Pokemon that Tomahawk UK piloted to a fourth place finish. It is the Alolan Ninetales. This is
Mm.
fairly interesting. It is an ice type that should scare away the jump love. It has pretty good pacing. It benefits from the updated Dazzling Gleam. It also would have access to the updated Psyshock, but I think that is currently less favored. What do you think, Speedy? It did have success before in previous metas and hasn't really been around recently. Will we see another like championship run with an Alolan Ninetales this season?
So to be fair, I'm going to be fair here. Alola Ninetales does have targets. It does have a lot of targets in the current meta, whether it's ground type Claydol, it can fight back against things like Clodsire. It absolutely destroys Pokemon like Guzzlord. Against Sableye, you can hit the Dazzling Gleam and deal a ton of damage. It's a very flexible Pokemon, especially with Powdered Snow. Um, it's got targets. Like it does have a lot of things it can hit. Unova Stunfisk is something else that we saw. It can hit Cradilly pretty hard as well. But I'm just going to say we've kind of alluded to this a few times about the rise of Tinkaton, the rise of more Pokemon that are maybe are fighting types or maybe even fire types heading into the meta like Typhlosion. If Alola Ninetales was going to have a moment, it had to be in Atlanta because I do feel like the meta is shifting yet again. And I will say one of the most interesting facets of it, from what I saw from Tomahawk, was its defensive play. Resisting all the dark type attacks was huge. Alola Ninetales versus Furret looked super, super uncomfortable. Even against the Shadow Drapians, right? Poison Sting was adding up, but the Crunch was resisted. The Aqua Tails were neutral. It was kind of like an even kilter matchup. Um, but yeah, I don't know where that Pokemon came from. I was so shocked to see it. But if you're going to look for an ice type, I think you're going to go to a Alolan Sandslash. So Alolan Ninetales on the fraud list for sure.
Yeah, I'm right on board with you. I think, like I alluded to it earlier, I thought that Tomahawk had like the most televisable place of the tournament, but I think the like using a team slot for Alolan Ninetales kind of let him down more than it helped him. Like there is that fringe play against the Furret, for example, but like it didn't even deter the jump love save swaps. And I feel like there was one situation where it just played out in the zeros. So the Alolan Sandslash, not Alolan Sandslash, Alolan Ninetales against
Mm.
the Shadow Jumpluff, and the acrobatics actually took it into the red, and it survived the weather ball. So great, you win that matchup just barely. You come out with like a weather ball, and what then? What do you throw it into an Alolan Sandslash? Do you throw it into an
Yeah.
Azumarill? It's like you don't really get that much mileage out of it, and you have better ice types, you have a better fairy and a Azumarill. I would even be surprised if, like, I know there's like some people that really love that Pokemon, but um, outside of like dedicated fans of Alolan Ninetales, I don't believe we'll see it in Top Cut again.
I think that Tomahawk's run is also miraculous when you consider that he's basically 4 times weak to Alolan Sandslash. I mean, you could argue the Claydol matchup is competitive, but Claydol, Lapras, Shadow Drapion, and Alolan Ninetales, all of them, I think if they're at a slight energy disadvantage or a shield disadvantage, Alolan Sandslash is cleaning those Pokemon up. And then his only answers are Shadow Sableye and Azumarill. So honestly, it's more impressive that he made it that far into the tournament with no Alolan Sandslash than he made it that far into the tournament with Alolan Ninetales. Like you
That's
said,
also true.
it almost feels like a like a handicap he was playing with. So yeah, I don't know what he saw. Apparently, I've heard this a lot. Apparently, he does see things that other people don't see in the meta
Oh,
and
he
in
does do
terms of
that a
move
lot.
sets.
He has
Yeah,
ideas that I cannot even fathom, and it works out quite a lot for him too. But
for him.
I, yeah,
Yeah,
I feel like he kind of wasted a team slot there.
yeah.
What can I
It
say?
it it almost reminds me of like Arrow's team building. Like the Arrow teams work for Arrow, the Tomahawk teams work for him. The players are so unique in their thought process, how they approach the game. But yeah, um, in summary, I would just say Alolan Ninetales firmly on the fraud watch, especially with the rise of Tinkaton, more ground types, more fire types, and whatever other Corviknights, whatever other obstacles.
Yeah, that are all of my Pokemon that I brought to this discussion. I don't know whether you have anything that you want to firmly call out as a fraud. Just like insult a Pokemon. This is your minute. You can go ahead.
I was just gonna say something that could actually be sneaky good. And now that I think about this more, I think Dilap might have been onto something with the Unova Stunfisk because we're gonna get Tinkaton. We believe it's going to get Bulldoze. We don't know for sure, of course. That's just a rumor.
I
But
think it's already out, right? Like right
oh, you're
now, you
right.
can already
You're right.
hatch
It
it
is
and you
out.
can evolve it. I think it gets bulldoze.
You're right. No, I'm sorry. I'm living in the past. I'm living. Take me back to Atlanta. I'm living back there. But
Mhm.
no, you know the Stunfisk. Dilap really floored Sceptile Ice because Sceptile Ice was playing Shadow Drapion double water every single time, and he finally just started bringing the Unova Stunfisk, giving it a shield, and just powered through the matchup. If you're looking at a Tinkaton meta, a Steel Fairy type, you're looking at maybe more waters, more fires, right? Like Talonflame or Shadow Typhlosion, and you're looking at more Corviknight as well. I'm starting to think maybe the Unova Stunfisk. You can mud bomb the Shadow Drapions. You can mud bomb the Alolan Sandslash. If they're running Shadow Claw, that's even better for you, right? As the Unova Stunfisk. I think he might have been cooking there with the pancake, and we'll have to see how that does in the upcoming weeks. I think that Unova Stunfisk is an up and comer. That's a Pokemon to watch, and I do think it'll get a medal this season.
Honestly, I don't disagree. I really dislike the Pokemon and how it plays. Like I'm typically
Mm,
fond of my electric types because I feel like they have a very dynamic play style. They're like high risk, high reward. Whereas when Stunfisk just sits there, gets to both of its moves at the same time, and does like little damage to chip away.
yep.
But its current roll compression actually bodes so well for it because you have the steels to target, you have the waters to target, and the important thing in my mind, like we just labeled Credilli as a fraud, but Jumpluff just won the tournament. But Jumpluff, as the grass type, actually loses to Unova and Stunfisk, even though that used to be like one of the worst situations for it, just like being lined up against the grass type. But now that the grass type runs a very fast attack and two flying type charge moves, you actually just Thunder Shock Discharge, charge probably like 4 or 5 times, and then you win that matchup. So yeah, I think
Wow.
Ufisk, that could be something. It could be something.
I know the new season of Stranger Things is on the way, but honestly, when we talk about Unova Stunfisk beating Jumpluff, I feel like I'm in the upside down. I don't know what's going on. This is like a parallel world. I don't know what's happening, but everything is dark and twisted. But no, I think yeah, this was really off the cuff. To prompted by your question, but yeah, I think Unova Stunfisk has a lot of play. You keep it safe from the mud slappers. You keep it safe from. It doesn't even need to be kept safe from a Zoom roll because it is a competitive matchup. But yeah, keep it safe from the grass types and the mud slappers, and you're a okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I would
I think
agree.
that's it.
And I feel like that would be that for this segment.
Awesome. All right, everybody, let us know if you like the fraud watch segment. We need like I was telling Zzweilous this before we started recording. We need like more of our soundboard to be developed. Maybe we need like a siren, like rear, 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 fraud watch, maybe we can go into something like that. I think that'd be fun. It help break up the show a little bit. But yeah, so I don't have any other thoughts to add. We're approaching 2 hours, but that's to be expected because this was a very beefy episode. Tons of tournaments that we covered, and we will be back, I believe. I believe next week. We could maybe do something depending on our schedules, but if not, we'll be back after Seville, no matter what. But yeah,
Sure.
man, I don't know. Anything else you want to add, or do we cover everything?
I feel like we've covered everything for the most part. Like, there was still like Tinkerton talk is still on my list, but I
Mm,
feel like we've mentioned that a lot already. So maybe just like briefly for everybody who might not have all the information on what Tinkerton is and does. It is currently like as of the time of the recording available in 7 kilometer X as its first stage evolution Tinkertink. It's a 3 stage evolution. And obviously you want to hatch those eggs, trade with lower level friends because you would like the bulkiest Tinkertons out there, and you need to reroll your IVs for that. And once you have obtained your Tinkerton, you are set with a Steel and Fairy type, so same typing as Pokemon such as Mawile and Klefki. But what sets it apart from those Pokemon is its far superior stat product.
mm.
It's like at like 2,200 ish, I think. So it's really fairly bulky. It can take a hit, and it paces fairly fast to its charge attacks as well. With Fairy Wind, it generates I think 9 energy per fast attack, and that enables it to get to bulldozes within 10 turns. And it also enables it to get to, I think, Heavy Slam and Play Rough are its
Yeah.
other charge attacks of choice. If you really want that big move, I think you can also opt for Flash Cannon. But most players I have seen run Play Rough as its default move, and then the choice is between Bulldoze to maybe get that defense drop and have some ground type coverage, or just go for the Heavy Slam to have a slightly faster, more accessible source of stab damage.
Tickaton rank one, like Zzweilous alluded to, is a 11414. You cannot get that from egg hatches, so you definitely need to do those trades. It goes to level 25.5. So the good news is that although it's rare, and I don't know, maybe you're like me and you've hatched 18 eggs and only gotten two Tinkas from those two batches, you know. Um, the good news is that it doesn't require any XL candies. It only goes to level 25 and a half. So outside of the egg problem, it is relatively accessible. And Zzweilous nailed the movesets, Play Rough, Heavy Slam, Flash Cannon, and Bulldoze. Fairy Wind is a great fast attack for energy generation. It also gets Rock Smash, so you're going to want to stick with Fairy Wind no matter what. I do think Ticketon will be a player. As a reminder to all of our competitors that are going down to Monterey, it will not be eligible for the Monterey regionals. However, it will be eligible after that. So definitely go ahead and do some low friendship trades. I saw some of the NA casters talking about Milwaukee and saying, hey, bring your Tinkas to Milwaukee. Let's re-roll them and do some trades. So definitely get out there and try to do that. Speaking of Pokemon to trade, swap, and try to get better IVs, I did hear that Rookity is actually back in the game. You might need to turn on your notification in your Pokedex to find it. But Rookity was basically gone from the game for weeks, and it was just has recently resurfaced. But it's a very rare spawn, so definitely look out for that. So, while speaking of upcoming events, we've got the TPC Indonesia playoffs, I believe, on April 20th. That's also the same day as the TPC Thailand, TPC South Korea playoffs as well. The following weekend, we have, excuse me, the same weekend as Monterey. So, in one weekend, we have TPC Indonesia, TPC Thailand, TPC South Korea, and Monterey. The following weekend, we have our TPC APAC playoffs as well as Seville. So that's going to be really, really fun. If you're listening to the podcast right now, you've got 56 days to get championship points before the cutoff. The cutoff, of course, is NAIC. Less than 2 months, Wireless. So we were talking about your placement on the leaderboards with the championship points. I can see why you've got one eye tracking your fellow competitors because less than 2 months is not a lot of time.
It's gonna be a fun race. It's gonna be a fun race. I still
Yeah.
have two events to go. I'll be at the Utrecht special event, and I'll be at the North American International Championships, which is going to be the event that is going to be giving out the most points because I see is always count a lot more than the quite lucrative already regional level events. So yeah, I'm really hoping to maybe secure my position then and there, but either way, it's been a very fun season. We are kind of like nearing the end of it. We're not quite there yet, but it's
Hmm.
really building up to something good, to something great, even. And I'm really looking forward to this very busy month to come.
Well, you heard him, everyone. If you want to take a photo with the Show Six podcast co-host, if you want an autograph from Zzweilous, you know where to find him. Make sure
Only
to
$5.
to run up, pay your fee for the picture and the autograph, and then and take home that keepsake. In terms of in-game events, there are just two I wanted to mention. This Tuesday coming up is the Moralol Spotlight Hour, which already awards you, I believe, 750 dust. It is going to be a double dust hour. So Niantic again has done a good job of stacking very valuable catches on top of the double dust hour. So we appreciate that. And then April 24th through the 29th is actually the Applin debut. That Pokemon is going to evolve into some kind of like dragon apple combination, which honestly, so far in The Sims doesn't look that good, but you do need to make sure to collect your tart apples, which will result in a flapple, or your sweet apple. I feel like I'm in Dr. Seuss world. Like, what is this? Or a sweet apple leads to apple ton, and a syrupy apple in the DLC, which is I'm reading this from Google, results in Diplin, which further evolves into Hydrapple. So Hydrapple, I believe, is like the Hydreigon. It's the third evolution. It's the big. Actually, no, it's just a snake coming out of an apple. I don't know what I'm talking about. This Pokemon doesn't look super good in the PvP Sims, so only time will tell. Unless you disagree, Silas. I don't know.
Like, I don't know how exactly this is going to be implemented, but it sounds like a fun time. I feel like lore wise, like,
Yeah.
it's kind of goofy but enjoyable. I like the typing. It's like Alolan Executor typing with like dragon and grass. Whether that will ever be good, it remains to be seen, but I like those guys. I'm kind of looking forward to that event.
There's a really funny meme format that I've seen. For example, it's like a Quagsire, and the quote below it says, "Hey, bro, go touch grass." And then you look at the typing, and it says "water and ground, 4 times weak to grass." And Quagsire responds, "My brother in Christ, I cannot." This is like this is like Applin going to Antarctica or the North Pole. It's like, hey, have a glass of ice water. It's like, my brother in Christ, I
Mhm.
cannot. I am dragon and grass. There is no way that's going to be possible. But all the memes aside, all the funny things aside, Ross, this has been a really fun episode. Thank you so much, as always, for all of your insights, for all of your breakdowns, analysis, your fraud watch. I think that's a really fun thing. We should bring it back to the show again. So if people like it, please let us know. Shout out to all of you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed our first video version of the podcast. So make sure to
Please leave a
subscribe.
YouTube comment. This is a thing that people can do now.
Exactly. Leave a YouTube comment. Let us know what you think. We're going to push this episode out to all of our friends within the community, and yeah, we love to know what you think. Anyways, Silas, I think that's all for us. I'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening. It was a great episode. Good luck, best of luck, in fact, to all of our trainers competing in Monterey, as well as the other TPC events and Seville later this month. And I think that's all for us, Silas. See you on the flip side, my friend.
Bye.